Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about purpose and action and the reactions that we get from our actions as well too. I'm going to start by using a somewhat of a true story here. There's this show and it was called a Shark Tank. Very, very good show where entrepreneurs, business people who had some kind of idea, concept, product that they wanted to mass market, and we would have these people who would be able to listen to the pitch, listen to the presentation, and if they liked it, be able to make a deal to fund their product or their business plans and so forth. These two young ladies, they were college students at the time when they made this pitch to these business people, and they had a fairly decent product pitch. Very young individuals looked like they were very vibrant in trying to produce their product, and they gave, like I said, a pretty decent pitch. Of course, along the way, these business people asked them several questions, and you kind of notice that they were realizing that nobody was really wanting to fund or give support or help this product or make a deal with them. Towards the latter part of this interview process, this pitch that they had, they made this comment that they worked really hard for everything, for what they did, so they deserved to be successful because they worked really, really hard. And the whole thing is the business people, the sharks as they were called, said this: no. You guys are way too young to you all think something that's not true. And that's the reality of it. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It could be so many different factors. You could work really, really hard, but that doesn't guarantee success. So that's the idea of, hey, just because you do good doesn't necessarily mean something good is going to happen to you. And we go back to one of Isaac Newton's laws in physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Energy has to be conserved in the system. So one side of an equation has to equal the opposite side of the equation. Think of it, 2 + 2 = 4. So you have 2 Skittles over here, another 2 Skittles over here, and you have 4 Skittles over on the opposite side of the equation. Yeah, they balance out. They don't lose anything overall. So when you look at how the world thinks that, hey, just because you're good to somebody, something good will happen to you. Realistically, no, it doesn't work that way. It's never worked that way, but everybody's led to believe that. When you take a test and you get all 10 answers correct, you get a good score in the end. You get a 100%. Otherwise, and we're led to believe, hey, you did good on a test, the result is something good, which is a good grade. Hey, that works in pushing people, motivating people to do good in school, because the reward is a good grade. And a good grade, when somebody else looks at it, means they're going to say, hey, a person who is intelligent, who has the ability to understand math or science or English or whatever it is, so that they can understand their strengths and their weaknesses. And that's the whole point of these grades, is to determine, hey, if you're really good in all these areas, then you have a chance of being more successful overall. But that doesn't guarantee success. So let's talk about good and bad for a second. The world defines good and bad based upon what society deems as good and bad. So The simplest example is not killing somebody is a good thing. Killing somebody is a bad thing. When you look at that general principle, yes. But let's look at all the caveats that come to that principle. And you come to find out it doesn't work that way. So let's look at those principles for just a second. So we say it's a bad thing to kill. Okay, so if it's such a bad thing to kill, and society deems it as a bad thing to kill, then there are places in this world that still have a death penalty. We, in this world, produce weapons, and we put it in the hands of the normal person and give them rules about what's okay to kill and what's okay not to kill, even though society deems that killing someone is a bad thing. If somebody breaks into the house and you shoot them in America, most places in America says, yeah, you're good to go, you're fine. So the hypocrisy behind it is like, even though it's a bad thing to kill somebody, you're allowed to kill somebody under a specific circumstance. And these are caveats to how the system works. War, lots of killing. But so long as it's your enemy, that's okay to kill them. Is it really? No. They're still people. They're still human beings. What defines an enemy? Enemy is somebody who thinks differently than you in a way where they're willing to invoke your world or decimate your world in a catastrophic way. So is it right to necessarily kill somebody? Once again, it becomes not a no. It's not right to kill anyone. It's a yes and no, like everything else in the world. We know that pain hurts. So somebody gets cut, you punch them, it hurts. No one likes it. Is pain a bad thing? Overall, yes. But we come to find out there are certain people who like pain to a certain extent. So for them, it's a good thing. For the rest of society, it's a bad thing. But for the people who like the pain, is it harming anyone else? No, it's not. So is it necessarily that bad? So our definitions of good and bad, once again, are based upon our own perceptions, how we see the world. So the idea, the perspective, is to change that methodology of thinking. Is to not necessarily look at what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. Let's look at something else that's more realistic. Let's look at what I consider kind of like physics, Newton's law. Action, consequence. And once again, people look at the term consequence as inappropriately. It's once again the perspective of that term consequence. Oh, you have a consequence. That there's a negative aspect or a negative perspective to it. It's not really a negative perspective. It is a consequence is something that happens because of an action. It's the reaction to a specific action that you take. And I'm going to use an example. You go and give a homeless person on the street $5. That's the action. Now let's look at the consequence of that action. The consequence of that action is that homeless person goes and buys a meal. Good. Cool. We're happy with that. Let's once again look at it this way. The action is you give that homeless person $5, and the consequence now is that person goes and buys a pack of cigarettes. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Well, society would say, well, why didn't the homeless person spend it on a meal? Or why didn't a homeless person spend it on something worthwhile? Well, here's the thing about it is like you cannot predict, you cannot readily think that just because your good action is going to come and produce the the reaction that you would want. It's just a consequence of an action. So it's not a good thing or bad thing. It's just what happens. Similarly, and this is going to go a little bit into left field, but these are realities as well too. Say, let's look at another action. The action is a person has a massive heart attack. Healthcare revives this person and gets this person back to health. That's the action. The consequence to that action is this person, yes, he gets to live a life, but in the end, ends up shooting up a school. How is anyone supposed to know? No one knows, and that's the key thing. Is a consequence is just because this and this happened. I mean, there's more to it than this. If you think about it, well, if that person didn't get revived or so, maybe that school would have not been shot up. Well, you can't consider that as an action and a consequence situation when you're trying to revive somebody. You try to do good for this person, and in the end, a bad result happens. Or, once again, you can look at it from the other side as, hey, we revived this person who had a massive heart attack. In the end, they advocate for better heart health. They educate people so that other people take care of their health better so that they don't have heart attacks. That's another consequence. You don't know exactly which one is going to happen, but once again, we don't know. We have an action. We would like a good consequence from it, but there's no such guarantee in life that something good will happen. So don't necessarily look at good or bad, negative or positive, what you would expect to happen. It's like we all know that if you tip a cup of water that's full, the water is going to come out of the cup. The action is tipping the cup of water that's full. The consequence of it is maybe most of it falls into the sink, or maybe it ends up on the floor and you have to wipe it up. Fairly simple action consequence. That's our somewhat predictable. When it comes to humanity, society, our actions are so towards other people. Just because you try to be good doesn't necessarily mean the result is going to be something that you see, your perspective is good. It may be your perspective of the consequence, the result of your action may not be that great. Similarly, when you see somebody do something good or bad, the consequence of it, you don't know. You just realistically don't know. You have a good idea, and most of the time, ideas are the expectation, most of it realistic. But is it fair to say that for every good action, a good result is going to happen? No. That's ideological thinking. That's thinking, some ideal world that everything is covered in rainbows and beautiful ponies and candy. The world is not. The world has its good side and its bad side. And if you think about it, if you realistically look at the world, the actions, the reactions, the actions and the consequences, they actually do balance each other out. If they didn't, and there was an imbalance to the system, nature tends to fix that. Just think of the temperature warming in this world, global warming as some people call it. When it comes to society, we see that as a bad thing because it changes all these natural phenomena. But that's how the consequence of the action occurs. The world heats up, so the consequence is ice melts better. Everybody knows this. But once again, that ice melt does what? It maintains and balances those temperature gradients. That's how the Earth has always taken care of itself. If you think about it, the Earth is bombarded by so much heat from the sun, so much energy from the sun every single day. Well, course it's going to heat up if it's absorbing all of it and not being able to reflect most of it back. There's radioactive decay on Earth that also creates energy. Well, that energy dissipates. Some of the sun's energy will dissipate, but it takes time to do so. But in the meantime, what does the Earth do? It uses its other natural systems to balance out. And if the balance is 10 degrees higher after everything is said and done, then the world will balance itself out at 10 degrees higher. The only problem is the Earth's going to be okay. It's been here for 4 billion years plus. Humanity's only been here for about 1 million years. We're a speck of dust in the world. Humanity's going to die off. Humanity's going to have to adjust to it or die off. But the Earth is still going to be here. So yes, the environmental protection, environmental friendliness that we have to have, the mindfulness that we have with our environment has nothing to do with protecting the Earth. It actually has more to do with protecting the human species itself, because the Earth, I don't understand how there are some people that think that, hey, humanity is going to actually decimate the Earth. We can cause all the nuclear fallout in the world, and 2 billion years from now, the Earth is going to be like, little blip, humanity's gone, they created enough problems, they're gone, no big deal. But 2 billion years from now, 1 billion years from now, 200 million years from now, 100 million years from now is a blip, such a small speck in Earth's history, in Earth's lifespan, that realistically, what is a single species? Yeah, we could do all the damage in the world, destroy every single a living form, or try to anyways, but how many of these mass extinctions have happened in the history of the Earth? There's been several, and what happens is the Earth rebounds back and redoes its thing. Nuclear fallout will go away, nuclear whatever it is, any damage that's done in 100 million years is going to be gone. Even if you think about the plastics, maybe a little bit might exist 100 million years from now, but all the plastic that's produced now, 200-300 million years from now, almost all of it will be non-existent. Why? Because the Earth has a way of recycling all of this stuff. Humanity doesn't have a good way of recycling it because it consumes too much energy to do it. We don't have the resources to do it. Not like the Earth, which has plenty of resources to fix these problems. So the actions and reactions that we have, the actions and consequences that we have right now, think of everything we do. If you look at all the carbon emissions that we produce, all the plastics that we produce, all the nuclear waste that we produce, everything that we do, those are the actions. The consequences are increased pollution, even though it seems like such a negative consequence of increased pollution, there's also a good consequence to it as well too. Better quality of life, better living conditions, overall better health, better life expectancy in the extent where we live longer, but we have more healthy years, more quality years to live as well too, which also means these people who live longer, who are the brightest, the intelligent people, not necessarily the 90% that is addicted to social media, or the 80% that's addicted to social media, but the other parts of the people who focus less on the social media and focus things on actually stuff that might actually fix the world. The nerds of our world, the geniuses of our world, their focuses or so is not on who did the most stupid thing on Instagram today. Their biggest thing is who did the most stupid thing in the world that caused so much complication that they have to fix. Yep. You look at even nowadays watching the stupidest thing that somebody does on social media. You think of the consequence of that. That one action means you had to buy a phone, which uses some very, very precious resources that are very, very limited. You look at the resources necessary to get that video to your phone, the amount of electricity, the computer systems behind it, the internet system, the data systems behind that video getting to your phone, and the person who produced that stupid video as well too, they had to have a phone, and all these precious resources that go into a system to produce and create, store, and transmit this data from one person to the other. It's great to have, so you can watch that stupid video, but it's also great to have to share knowledge across the expanse of the globe, which used to be a very, very complicated thing. If you think about most recently, is they were able to produce one of the first images of what they call a black hole. Surprisingly enough, the amount of information could not be transmitted through our typical data services, and a bunch of hard drives had to be flown from one place to the other and uploaded into a system, because that was how much information, and that was the most efficient, the best way, the fastest way to get all that information safely from one place to the other. All these systems require resources. That's the action and the consequence. The consequence is all these resources. They add to the carbon footprint. They add to the global warming, because everybody knows that carbon dioxide, the extra carbon dioxide that's unnecessarily produced, adds to the global warming. Good thing or bad thing? Well, it's a thing. And that's the key thing, is you'll hear me mention this. It's just a thing. It's not a good thing or bad thing. It's just what happens. If you think about that one thing so that we can see the black hole, is it a good thing or a bad thing? The action is it produced a shit ton of carbon emissions so that we can see this image of the black hole. Sounds like a bad thing, but the consequence is also our knowledge capacity increases in the scientific community, which is actually, if you think about it, in the long term, not 2 years from now, but 20 years from now, is that going to be a good thing? Absolutely, because that also means that technology improves, our understanding, our knowledge of the universe improves, which also means that we're going to come up with better technologies for something else. Just think of all the efforts that the science community has placed into producing lasers, or producing all these chemicals and substances. If you think about how our batteries have improved, our technologies, our chemistries started from the scientific community, and it still comes from the scientific communities. Why are our phones faster, better, and smaller? Because science has came up with ways to make the materials in there thinner, lighter, but still durable and stronger. Think of glass nowadays versus what it was 40 years ago. We have very, very thin glass that's extremely resilient. If that glass didn't exist 40 years ago, it only exists in our era now because of all the science. And because of those science, we have more powerful computers, more powerful systems to be able to figure out things that if we didn't have them and we had the same systems 40 years ago, it would still take 300-400 years for humanity to figure it out. But now instead we can figure it out in a year or two. And because of it, we come up with better technologies, and better technologies means faster and more powerful computer system. And that cycle runs because that's the action and the consequence of how the system works, because something as simple as trying to figure out how to look at a black hole, or see a picture of a black hole, or all the space telescopes, or all the space science, astrophysics that we do to be able to sense all these things, or to look at all these things. It takes a massive amount of knowledge to create, build, engineer, and think of things that work the way they do. Like I said, very intelligent people, way, way above my knowledge capacities, but their actions right now doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. But once again, 40 years ago, when somebody thought of this, this, and this, let's get somebody to the moon. And JFK, President Kennedy at the time, said this: we don't choose to do it because it's easy. We choose to do it because it's hard. And that's the thing about it, is everything we do is in science is because it's hard, because it's impossible. And we says, and believing that something is impossible, science says no. Let's find out for sure. If it's not, if it's impossible, we'll figure out a way. And so far, we figured out a lot of things in science, but not everything. And those things that science still hasn't figured out, they're going to work on. We built a humongous collider or so because of it. And now we're wanting to build something that's 5 times bigger than that. We're looking at nuclear fusion instead of nuclear fission. And nuclear fusion is something that happens in the sun, which is a device that is 10,000 times bigger than the size of the Earth. And we're going to fit it in a little machine comparatively on Earth so that we can use it for energy at some point. Who knows when that's going to happen, but that's still going to require a lot of science. The action itself is the continuation of the science. The consequence, don't know. Hopefully the result is that we get to nuclear fusion. The consequence of human actions or so, for even media consumption, produces more of a carbon footprint. It causes global warming. But nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about burning wood versus burning natural gas. But once again, burning wood produces more bad emissions for the environment than burning natural gas. But yet we still have people who say, it's like, well, it's a little bit of wood. Yeah, but if one person burns a little bit of wood, and and a million other people also say they're burning a little bit of wood, you combine the result of a little bit of wood for a million people. That's still quite a bit of wood. So the action is thinking that a little bit of wood is negligible. The consequence is you're still a proponent. You're still somebody who says they're okay with global warming. Does that make a whole lot of sense? Well, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it does make sense because their mindset is to think that they're not adding too much. It's not that they're adding too much. A single person doesn't add too much. But a single person, you multiply that by 7 billion people, that's quite a bit. So actions and consequences, look at it in perspective of not good or bad, because like I said, the consequence is if we change the environment too much, humanity is going to die off. We're going to go extinct here on Earth. That's a consequence. When it comes to the Earth being happy with that, the Earth doesn't really care. And if the Earth was unhappy with that and we caused our own extinction, the Earth is going to be like, cool, problem solved. So humanity fixed their own problem. They got rid of humanity. So did we really harm the Earth because of global warming? For a humanity, a single species, to think to that extreme, that species has to be pretty conceited as well too. Go figure. But once again, humanity has thought we are the pinnacle, we are the upper echelon because of all the technologies that we produce. And outside of every species on Earth, we are the only ones that have produced what we do. So yeah, we probably are on this Earth the pinnacle of a species. But we're also not the brightest ones because we are producing all of the things that is destroying the Earth. No other creature on Earth realistically does anything like that. They fall in line with nature. They have a balance with nature. Humanity has decided that we are above nature's law. Okay, that's fine. So we choose to circumvent nature's law. Everyone lives, or we try to help everyone survive. Or so more people surviving means more people who overutilize their own carbon footprint. 7 billion people, 10 billion people, whatever it might be. there's a balance to the system, and humanity is trying to balance that system. We are looking at renewable energies. We're looking at all these other things that can help our environment become better. It just takes time. In the meantime, the consequence of us taking all this time is that nature will balance itself out. Yes, our glaciers are melting. Yes, probably our sea levels will rise because of it. But in the timeline, this has happened multiple times in the past. We as a species are speeding up that process for our chapter in Earth's history. What it causes in the long run, don't know. The consequence of it, nobody really knows. We try to be good. We've done bad things. We're trying to fix all these things. Will we fix it fast enough? Don't know. A consequence might be the human or the extinction of our species. The consequence might be we might be able to do it fast enough where we can sustain our species in a better environment on Earth, so we can survive for a lot longer than originally expected. Once again, the consequences we don't know. The action has already been done. Similar to any other action, an action is an action. You just don't know if it's going to be a good result or a bad result, or what society deems as a good or a bad result. But a result will happen regardless if it's good or bad. We just hope, or I just hope, that for every good action I do, a good result will come out of it. But I'm not so stupid to think every action that I do, every good action that I attempt, a good result will occur because of it. That's just ignorant. That's just arrogant thinking. Thank you for watching this video.